Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Bridget Anderson, the President and CEO of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. Welcome to our Business Resiliency series, Navigating COVID-19. Today, we're going to be focusing on the latest support available from the federal government for Canadian businesses with the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, the Honourable Mary Ng. In this time of unprecedented uncertainty, we want to ensure that our members and the broader business community can find answers to their most pressing questions. Through a series of free webinars, experts will provide guidance and answer questions to their most pressing questions. We encourage you to take part in this discussion. You can engage with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram by using the hashtag GVBOT. And we're also using Slido for today's discussion to allow you to submit questions. Go to slido.com and enter the code GVBOT Business. Before we start, and especially in these challenging times, we want to thank our long-standing sponsors called our Pillar Partners. They include TELUS, CN, YVR, BCIT, and Air Canada. Their support makes our work happen, and we are very thankful for their support. And thank you as well to our preferred media partner, Business in Vancouver. Now, today we are joined by the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. From promoting Canada to the world as a great place to do business, to helping entrepreneurs and businesses grow and access new markets, Minister Ng is focused on helping Canadians succeed. Minister Ng, I'm going to hand it over to you for a few minutes for some opening remarks, and then we'll get to some questions. Over to you, please.
Bridget, thank you so very much. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge that this webinar takes place on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And I believe a couple of my parliamentary colleagues are also on this webinar with me, the Honourable Minister Joyce Murray and MP Ken Hardy. So if they're on the line, it's wonderful to also be here with you. And good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank you, Bridget, and thank the Vancouver Board of Trade for giving me this opportunity and the time to join all of you during what is certainly a difficult time. And if things were a little different, I wish we could be together in person. But I do want to start by acknowledging the very many contributions that all of you as business owners have made in helping us flatten or plank the curve by temporarily closing your doors or by scaling back your operations. Our government has made it a priority to support businesses of all sizes as you and we all weather this storm. And we'll be right by your side as we all take all the measures necessary now to ensure that Canadians stay safe and healthy. Votre gouvernement est avec vous en ces temps difficiles. When it gets hard, know that your government is right there with you. We understand the considerable effect COVID-19 is having on the British Columbian economy and in the Lower Mainland. And over the last many weeks, we have been speaking with and listening to thousands upon thousands of business owners in every sector, every business size, and in all regions across the country. And if you finish today's webinar and you have one takeaway, I hope it is this, that while COVID-19 was beyond all of our control, our government is here for you every step of the way, and we are prepared to do whatever it takes to help businesses, your employees, and indeed all Canadians get through this challenging time. Whether you're self-employed, an entrepreneur, a business owner, you shouldn't have to worry about losing your business or your job during this time. It's why the government has introduced a number of supports to provide immediate relief for business owners to reduce their costs, to keep or to rehire their employees, and to help with operating funds. So how are we doing this? We're helping you, the business owner, keep your costs low by deferring the GST and HST and customs duties payments for 3 months and extending the tax filing deadline and payment until August the 31st. We're helping with operating funds, cash flow to pay for those operating costs that you take on and that you indeed pay on a regular basis, costs like the rent or your salaries. And what we've done is we've unlocked billions of dollars of lending for businesses. including a $40,000 interest-free loan for small businesses and other loans that go up to $6.25 million for SMEs who need larger loans. These are available directly through your financial institution, so your bank or your credit union, who you normally bank with. And we've also created the Canada Emergency Response Benefit that will give $2,000 per month to anyone who has lost their income due to this crisis, including business owners and self-employed people. Applications started this week on Monday, and it continues to access this benefit. And finally, to help businesses keep their staff employed, we will be bringing in a 75% wage subsidy. This will be backdated to March the 15th to help businesses in our country. We announced this just a little over a week ago, and within this 1 week, we have heard from businesses, again, of all sizes across all sectors for some adjustment and the need for flexibility so that more employers can access the wage subsidy. So Minister Morneau, the finance minister, and I announced this earlier this afternoon. And again, it's a 75% wage subsidy for employees earning up to $58,700. And this will, to be eligible for the wage subsidy, you will have, your business will need to have experienced a 30% loss in revenue. It can be year over year, so March or rather April and May this year compared to last year in 2019. And for March, it isn't 30%, but it is a 15% reduction in revenue that you will see this year over last year. We also recognize that there are some businesses that are newer businesses and who otherwise with that measurement would not qualify. So we've made that adjustment. And for those businesses, it'll be the average of their revenue earned in January and February of 2020, so of this year. So creating a bit more flexibility so that more businesses can take advantage of the wage subsidy. And this measure is important because we've heard from so many employers and from businesses how valuable it is for you to keep your employees, because when it is safe to do so, and when businesses start beginning to experience the activity in your businesses, that you will be able to regain ground more quickly if your team stays together. So everything we've announced to date is in response to what we've heard from businesses directly from across the country. So I really, really appreciate that, and thank you, and please continue to do that. It is how we have come up with the measures that we are, by listening to all of you. But we also know that there's more work to be done. And I want to assure you that I, the Prime Minister, my colleagues, all of us, we're going to do everything we possibly can to help our businesses in this country. So we will continue to listen to ideas. We will continue to be open to new solutions. And it really does happen through conversations like this. So I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have. And our government will remain unwavering in our support for Canadians, for our healthcare system, and for our economy. And no measure is off the table. And maybe I'll end here, which is to say that Canadians are innovative, we're strong, we're resilient. It's been very inspiring to see Canadians come together in new and indeed amazing ways, whether it's that young person helping to buy groceries for the older neighbors who can't leave their homes, or restaurants, even though they're closed right now, offering free meals to our frontline healthcare workers and essential workers, or the countless Board of Trade members across Vancouver and the Lower Mainland just stepping up to help in a myriad of ways, and Canadian businesses and enterprises stepping up to retool their businesses so that they can make the ventilators or the PPEs that is so necessary for our healthcare workers and our frontline workers in the fight against COVID-19. And while this time is uncertain, and I know that it's also very stressful, I've talked to so many businesses and entrepreneurs, and we understand this. we're going to pull together and we're going to help each other. That's what this is about, and that's who Canadians are. And we see the very specialness of us as Canadians in doing that during this very difficult time, and we can certainly take pride in that. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. Merci beaucoup. I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas and your comments, and just having a discussion and answering questions. So thank you so much for this. And Bridget, over to you, and we'll start, I guess, the conversation.
Thanks very much, Minister. And, I, like you, have spent countless hours in the last several weeks talking to our members about some of the challenges that they're having, and many of them having significant challenges. But I've also spent lots of hours speaking to members of your government and relaying those concerns. And what we're hearing from small businesses particularly is about cash flow, just how difficult it is around cash flow, about the ability to pay bills like rent. And so appreciating that this is still very fluid, and your government has been quick to respond, and also quick to respond to some of the feedback that you've been receiving, and particularly around the 75% wage subsidy. How long do you think it is going to take for some of these funds to reach business owners' hands?
Well, we're working as fast as we can, and I understand how urgent the situation is, and because like you, I've been talking to businesses, and we wanted to make sure that we announce this. I know that even in the announcement and the clarification and the broadening and the further flexibility, that almost immediately I keep hearing from businesses that they have what they need to make the decisions, and those decisions really are, am I going to lay off my staff, or can I keep them on, or for those that have already laid off some of their team members, can I bring them back on? So I know businesses are absolutely making those decisions and confronting that. And right now, the finance minister has said it's going to probably take 3 to 6 weeks, and we hope that the 6 weeks is really the outside timeline to be able to get this support out to businesses. So I hear you, and we're working as fast as we can, and people are literally working around the clock to make sure that we can get this out to our businesses. But I would probably draw people to what is already out there, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, that line open, so for those who are self-employed, but also literally within days, the financial institutions across the country, they are ready to take in, to work with businesses, and particularly the small businesses, to be able to do this $40,000 interest-free loan. And that is literally like tomorrow or the next day. So it's really within days for the banks to be able to do that. And the reason we worked with the financial institutions of the country is because they are everywhere across the country. And being able to work with them just means that we have this capability of being able to get this cash flow, if you will, out to businesses as soon as we possibly can.
And Minister, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that $40,000 loan. This applies to organizations that have a payroll of $1 million or less. So it is small businesses, and it's very much focused on them. Some of the numbers that we're hearing from the city of Vancouver just alone, looking at temporary closures of 15,000 businesses, and this would be small, medium, and some larger enterprises. But you have to do some quick math to figure that there would be there would at least be thousands of small businesses impacted here, and they are concerned that they're going to reach that point of no return, that if they don't see some funds getting to them within the next several weeks, that the bills are piling up and they may not be able to come back. So can you talk a little bit about what the funds from that $40,000 loan can be used for?
It is used for operating expenses. So it can be for your rent, it could be for your electricity bills, it could be for paying your insurance payments. So it is very broad. It's intended to be operating expenses that virtually all, if not most, if not all businesses incur every single month. It will also allow you to pay for salary and wages as well. And like I said, it's ready. It's virtually ready to go by just going to your bank and $40,000 interest-free. It also doesn't mean that you have to take all $40,000 as well, right? I mean, I've certainly heard from some businesses that, well, I don't really need the whole thing. So for those businesses, for example, who don't. You take what you get the loan for what you need, and 25% of the loan is 25%. So 25% of the 40,000, I might add, is forgivable if you repay it by the end of 2022.
Thank you very much for that, Minister. You're also responsible for international trade, and obviously a lot of focus on the Greater Vancouver area because we are the gateway, and the international supply chains have obviously been very severely disrupted. So can you talk about some of the initiatives that you're working on to keep the supply chain open and also to help those companies get through this crisis?
Absolutely. I mean, we have of course, something as sort of very close to home is of course the Canada-U.S. border. And while the restrictions have been put in place to ensure that we are keeping Canadians safe and flattening or planking the COVID-19 curve, the flow of essential goods and services across that border, of course, remains open. And we are committed to ensuring that, that supply chains for, essential medical supplies, goods and services, agricultural products, and other essential services continue to remain open. I had a meeting of my G20 trade ministers just last week, and there we all committed to making sure that that we continue to support the global trade and investment during this, during the health crisis. And in fact, on the 25th of March, Canada joined with Australia, Chile, New Zealand, Brunei, Singapore in committing to keep supply chains open and removing any existing restrictive measures on essential goods, especially medical supplies. So we will continue to work with our international partners to make sure that the supply chains indeed stay open during this period. It is every country is of course, because the pandemic is global, every country is dealing with COVID-19 in their own way and needing to make sure that they are keeping their citizens safe and stopping the spread of COVID-19 and looking for very necessary equipment and medical supplies, whether they are ventilators or PPEs or masks and gowns, gloves, that sort of thing. Canada is no different. So, we have begun the effort, a significant effort, and it's incredible to see how Canadian businesses have stepped up to this effort to have a made in Canada solution for those very essential supplies that we're going to need here in this country. But at the same time, we are also encouraging that supply chains continue to stay open during this time.
Thanks, Minister. We're going to go to some questions now that some of the viewers of this webinar have submitted. I do have a couple of questions for you on when we get to the pivot to recovery, but let's first get to some of these questions here on Slido. And so the top question, and I'll read it out for you because I know you're not able to see this, is will there be any support for businesses that don't qualify for the current offering? So sole proprietors who have independent contractors and not employees. Have you been hearing some feedback from these kinds of business owners?
Yes, I have. The approach that we took as a government is to make sure that we put measures out. It's a balance between the speed of getting something out and making sure that we are listening and adapting and modifying along the way. And I think that you're seeing that from us over the last many days. Today's wage subsidy is an example, but for those contractors, independent contractors who wouldn't be eligible for any, for the measures that I talked about, the CERB is there, and that certainly is there to help the independent contractor or the entrepreneur who may not be able to access some of these other measures as well. And for that, you heard the Prime Minister, even just as a couple of days ago, indicate that we know that for some people that their income may not drop all the way to zero, but they're making sort of very little, and that they want to continue to do that. So we are absolutely looking through that and making sure that we are making adjustments. So what I would say as a broad answer to everyone who asks the question, which is, you know, is there more, or, you know, are we gonna, you know, my answer is we're working very, very hard to make sure that no one is left behind, and that the work isn't done yet, and we're gonna have to keep working with Canadians to make sure that we are able to respond to, you know, to respond to people and support them during this very difficult time.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions here because it really is about debt. Many small businesses don't have the ability to take on more debt. And so will there be other non-debt measures that the government is looking at or considering to help small business?
Well, the $40,000 loan is, you know, is for, you know, 25% of that is forgivable, and that piece is completely forgivable. I mean, and essentially what that piece will be is, you know, it, I don't know, I don't have another term for forgivable, so maybe I'll just leave it there. And all of these products, whether it is a $40,000 loan or the higher number SME loan, these are all guaranteed by the Government of Canada. And what that means is it means that for businesses who are saying that they can't take on more, and typically would not be able to through their financial institution, during COVID-19 and these financial supports actually enable you to, because of the significant guarantees that the Government of Canada has provided to the financial institutions.
And the timeline for repaying the debt is quite long. Could you just remind us of when the deadline is? It's December of 2022, is that correct?
Yeah, for the $40,000 loan, it's available, like I said, you know, virtually this week. You should be able to get it from most of the Canadian banks and probably a couple of the credit unions, and we're just going to make sure that we keep enlisting more of our financial institutions, including the smaller banks. So that's available, and you have up until December of 2022. So that's a little over 2.5 years. It's about 2.5 years to be able to repay that, and that is available now. And then for the other SME loan that is also guaranteed by the Government of Canada, those ones do have sort of commercial interest rate, and they are up to $6.25 million, and there's a 10-year repayment period there.
And actually, you did refer to a question that is coming up next about the list of eligible financial institutions for that $40,000 loan. So you're saying that list will be expanded to include more credit unions. And another question here in that is developmental or patient capital lenders. So that list is still being developed now?
Yes, I mean, we're bringing more and more people, more and more financial institutions, sort of Canadian financial institutions on board. So the big banks to start with, some of the credit unions to start with, and we're going to keep doing that. And the idea is that whoever you are banking with, the institution that you're banking with now, you should be able to go there and get access to these loan supports. And we're qualifying more and more, like I said, smaller institutions as well. And if they're, you know, because the idea is we do want you to work with the bank that or the financial institution that you have been working with, because, you know, I'll give you a really neat story. I was talking to a bank manager who's been a bank manager for about 30 years, and he said to me that he remembers, you know, lending a range of loans to so many businesses, and he gave me this one really neat story and said, look, you know, about 25 years ago, I lent to this, you know, this couple. It was a small business at the time. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but through the years, there have been challenges. And they've had to, as a bank, looking after their customer, had to care about the customer. And that client relationship is just so important. So they said over the years, we've had to help them, you know, refinance or find ways of being able to help them with, you know, their cash flow or some of the issues that have come up when there are downturns. And they said this, while it is very, very challenging during COVID-19, they want to be there as well, to be that partner, to be with the businesses in order to help them through this period. And what the Government of Canada has done is created this enormous liquidity and enormous lending support by guaranteeing these loans and just providing that sort of billions of dollars of liquidity into the marketplace.
Some of the feedback that I'm hearing from some of the small businesses is while they are grateful for this $40,000 loan and part of that being forgivable, that the criteria is quite narrow. Is this something that your government is hearing and consider broadening the criteria?
The criteria right now, I mean, is, the threshold is, a minimum of a $50,000 payroll to a maximum of $1 million. So it really is to cover small businesses, and the other product will cover those businesses that are more. So we are listening, and we will continue to listen. As I said, we certainly want to make sure that we are supporting all of our businesses and the broadest range of businesses. So I am hearing that and know that we are listening. And but right now, going out, it is that criteria I've just set out. But we are listening, and we're listening very intently.
Okay, and just to talk to the person who put in this question at the top about having their rent reduced, this loan, you can use it to help pay for rent, but really the questions around any kind of reduction in rent seem to be more headed towards municipalities and the province. So I'll maybe move to the next question there. And Minister, ask for some advice that you might have for any small businesses that have already laid off people. Could they be using this 75% wage subsidy to bring those people back, or even the work share program?
Absolutely. That's the whole point of the wage subsidy. We want to make sure that we are priming our businesses so that they are, they are in the best position possible for recovery. And we know that one of the single most important things for recovery are your talent, or your employees. When you're running a business, you do it together. You do it together with with those who are on your team. So we want to be sure that employers and businesses are supported by being able to pay, by the federal government paying 75% of those wages up to $58,700, and this will cover also those employees that will be rehired back, and we're also making sure that employers who are eligible for the wage subsidy will be entitled to receiving 100% refund for certain employer paid contributions to EI, to the CPP, and this refund would apply to the entire amount of the employer paid contributions with respect to either remuneration paid to furloughed employees in the period where they're eligible for the wage subsidy. So it's this is absolutely the intent. I've been saying, people have asked me about the threshold, and I said, look, there are businesses we know that despite this difficult period of COVID-19 have not experienced revenue losses because they've been okay. Their business continues to serve their clients and they're not experiencing revenue losses, and therefore they haven't had to make the tough choice of either laying people off or thinking about laying people off. On the contrast, I mean, in the Lower Mainland, in British Columbia, we know that there's a big tourism sector. We know that the hospitality sector, we know a number. I mean, you walk down the street, your neighborhood, and you see the cafe who normally would be open isn't. So while they may be closed, we still want you to be able to keep your employees, and we will pay 75% of those wages so you can do that, so that you are more primed, more ready for recovery when it's safe to do so.
And what about those companies and organizations that are in the tourism sector, and they're just getting into their busy period now? The weather is changing, and perhaps they might be even getting ready to open their doors, but they aren't able to do that right now. So would the wage subsidy perhaps be extended to go a little further into the summer?
Well, right now it is. It's going to cover this immediate period. I mean, so March, April, and May. And we're going to have to keep listening, and we're going to have to keep working with businesses. We wanted to make sure that the measures that have gone out are helping immediately the businesses and Canadians who are experiencing, who are or could be experiencing hardship as a result of COVID-19. And we will just keep assessing the situation. Part of the flexibility that we also introduced today in the wage subsidy actually is in response to the very good feedback we received from the tourism sector. So making sure that we are able to, allow for cash and accrual type accounting enables for that kind of flexibility, and that actually will be helpful to, some of those in that sector. So, we'll have to keep working at this, but right now it is March, April, and May.
And I know that your time is limited and we still have lots of questions coming in. So perhaps this will be the last question because there are some that you've addressed already, but this one we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. So for those workers who have been laid off and they are now collecting that $2,000 CERB, I guess the benefit, and then there are employers who want to bring them back for maybe 5 hours or 10 hours, but they're not able to do that. Is that something that the government would consider as changing that so that people can be able to collect a portion of the CERB and still receive some hours?
Well, I guess we'll listen to, we'll listen intently. I mean, getting access to the CERB, I think that this is where the employer makes a choice, right? I mean, the employer can make the choice and say, I'm going to bring you back, and the government will pay 75% of what your pre-crisis wages or salary is going to be. And even if the volume of work is only 5 to 10%, that's a decision that the employer can make, and therefore your employee, will get their pre-crisis, wages or salary at that level. So you can imagine if you are getting the CERB right now, that is a very, very good benefit to help a lot of Canadians. But what we're trying to do here is to encourage employers to bring back those employees into their employ. But that's certainly a decision that the employer can make.
Thank you, Minister. And, a lot of the questions were still coming in about help that small businesses need on some of those fixed costs. So as this challenging times continue, I'll continue to speak to you and your ministry on behalf of our members and let you know some of the challenges that they're facing. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Well, Bridget, thank you. And please keep talking to us. I mean, the feedback, I can't thank you enough, and everyone on this line and all the businesses. Really, your feedback actually does help, and it really does help us make these programs better and more responsive. Tell us what works, tell us what doesn't work, and Bridget, thank you so much for doing that, and we'll make sure that we are able to get answers back to you for those who didn't get their answers, tonight. And again, I really appreciate the time you've given to me here, and everyone. Stay safe and be well, and I look forward to speaking to you again, I hope soon.
Thank you very much, Minister. I really do appreciate your time. I know that you're very busy. Please stay well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And if you would like to watch this webinar again, you can visit theboardoftrade.com and go to our COVID-19 page, and it will be available shortly. We would also like to continue this important conversation and stay connected. We are going to be hosting a series of free webinars on navigating COVID-19. Over the next few days, we'll be bringing together experts to speak on a variety of topics, and coming up, we'll have a webinar on e-commerce and also on the deferral of payments, such as rent, which is a very hot topic for many small and medium businesses as well. We have also created a business resource page designed to provide planning toolkits and information to help businesses navigate these challenging times. You can find that at boardoftrade.com on our COVID-19 page. And this page will be updated as new information becomes available, which it does almost on a daily basis. Thank you to everyone for taking part in today's webinar. We look forward to connecting again soon, and to echo the wise words of Dr. Bonnie Henry, our Provincial Medical Health Officer: be kind, be calm, and be safe.